Good morning. Welcome to the United States Sports Academy and our weekly sports talk program. My name is Dr. Steve Butler, and I'll be your moderator today. And with me is Dr. Tim Foley, our Dean of Student Services. Today we're going to talk about the NCAA. And as most of you know from reading the newspapers and watching ESPN, the NCAA has been under fire for the last 18 months. They've been sued by several different people. They made some highly questionable rulings. And they generally just, I think, most of the people in college sports have lost confidence in the NCAA's ability to rule fairly. And I think this kind of came to a head a couple months ago when the Big Five conferences basically said we're gonna make a lot of our own rules going forward because NCAA is not there to benefit us as much as we feel they need to. And for just some background, in the early 1900s, President Theodore Roosevelt almost outlawed college football because there were several people that got badly hurt and even a few that died. So that was kind of the impetus for the forming of the NCAA. Then they really got some power in the late 50s and early 60s when they really became the institution that we know today and really took control of college athletics. The real power that the NCAA carries rests in the college presidents and this we think kind of mundane definition of amateurism and what amateurism is all about. I think one of the reasons why the NCAA may be in trouble these days is their inconsistency in their rulings. Some people, I've said on this program a couple times, I watched Russell Wilson play Class A baseball and go back to school and compete as a quote-unquote amateur, even though he got paid very well to be a minor league baseball player. Signed a big bonus and everything. Same thing with Kyle Parker, who used to be the quarterback at Clemson. Signed a $500,000 bonus for the Colorado Rockies, and yet was able to go back to Clemson and play college football as an amateur. And then we had what was the punter's name in Colorado? Jeremy Bloom, who got paid for doing some different kind of X Games kind of sports, skiing and stuff. And then they told him he couldn't play college football because he was a professional. So those kind of goofy rulings, I think, date all the way back to Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe lost some of his Olympic medals because of the amateurism thing. Most of the power in the NCAA today rests in actually with the Big Five power conferences, and they're the ones that make the money. They're the ones that generate the revenue. They're the ones that pay the huge salary of the president of NCAA and his staff. And so I think we'll start with there. Tim, do you really think the NCAA is in big trouble?
I think it is in trouble. I think you summed it up. Looking at the word amateurism. What is it? I mean, you can't have a manual 600 pages long and not really get to the point. We got to look at how, especially Division I athletes. What is a Division I athlete? Most people believe that it's a 40-hour job. I mean, on top of a school. Instead of throwing money, we just got to take a look at what it is now. And, I was watching the Notre Dame game, and, they said that they've had their last 5 tight ends have been first-round draft picks or something like that, or have been all playing pro ball. So in a lot of cases, it is a pipeline to the professional level. But at the same time, let's just look at the treatment. Let's look at, again, it makes no sense for a quarterback to be able to play summer baseball and then for another athlete to play college football but not keep money that he makes from endorsements from skiing.
Right.
That makes no sense. But I don't think I think it is in trouble, but I think we got to do a better job of separating it. Like at the Division I level, you have schools that, like University of Alabama, a huge budget, and then we have schools that don't play football. So we have all these different schools, but I really think when the Power Five conferences said we're going to break off and make their own rules, I think that these schools are so different. They need to be under some different. There need to be some changes for those schools.
Yeah, I think rules for University of Alabama and for Widener University can't be the same.
Exactly.
And right now they kind of are the same, and that's some of the inconsistency that people struggle with. That having confidence in NCAA is just the inconsistency. there's the famous case of their investigation at the University of Miami where they actually paid a person to testify and ask. I'm sorry, they paid a lawyer to ask certain questions in a deposition of a criminal case, and then used that testimony to try to get the University of Miami in trouble. And I think Donna Shalele, when she was president of the University of Miami, said, "No, that's not going to work. We're not going to accept that." And I think the NCAA stepped way over their bounds of power in the Penn State case. And I think they've kind of realized that now, as you know, as they backed off on the penalties. I think that was way out of line. When I look at the Penn State case, I see the person who committed the crime is in jail. The people who allowed it to happen, unfortunately, Coach Paterno passed away, but the president of the university, the vice president, and the athletic director all were forced out of their jobs. So, why punish a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old kids who had nothing to do with it?
That's exactly right. Why do you hurt, one person makes a mistake, breaks the law, so you hurt the program, you hurt a bunch of young kids. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the things why people, I personally have no confidence in the NCAA. I think they could care less about student athletes. I think their number one mission in life is to make money for their member schools and for themselves. I think the ultimate hypocrisy in my mind was on the website when they announced the one half-game suspension of Johnny Manziel for allegedly signing autographs and getting paid for it. On the same website, there's a link where you could go to ncaa.com and buy a number 2 Texas A&M jersey. Now they claimed it wasn't a Johnny Manziel jersey, but I think probably every football fan in the world 2 years ago knew who number 2 for Texas A&M was.
Exactly right. If a quarterback, a big-time basketball player, speaking of big-time basketball, anyone on Kentucky's team, if those guys want to sign autographs and get paid for it, hey, great.
Yeah. If a musical prodigy is going to Juilliard or even going to a school, I worked at a school small school that had a very good music program, Columbus State University. If one of their musicians is really talented and is sought out by people and signs autographs and gets paid for it, nobody would say a word. But an athlete does it. And that brings us to the Ed O'Bannon case. Oh, yeah. Ed O'Bannon just won his lawsuit, and the NCAA's reaction was to take away the rights from EA Sports and those other companies, the naming rights. And, they kind of took this. The NCAA kind of took the same line there. It never says this is Ed O'Bannon, but he's got the same number. I think it was number 31 at UCLA.
And he wears the undershirt, same thing, 6'8".
Looks exactly like him. And they're making so much money, yet it's like you and I talked earlier today. A kid doesn't have money to eat. Coach invites him over to his house and feeds him, and technically that's an NCAA violation. Yeah. What Bruce Pearl got in trouble for at Tennessee was he had some recruits over his house for a barbecue. Sitting around the pool eating chicken and ribs, and that's an NCAA violation. So the next question I have is do you think the damage is irreparable?
I don't think so. But they got to make some changes. They got to loosen up. They got a lot of these things, like you said, the barbecue, the autographs, it's just stupid. A guy signing autographs, getting paid for it, I still consider him I still consider him an amateur.
Sure.
That doesn't make any sense. He's not a professional athlete. He's signing autographs. If he gets a jersey, he wants to sell his jersey, that doesn't make him a professional. They gotta change some of these idiotic rules. I mean, kid can't fly home, let him have a steak dinner somewhere. I mean, just certain things like that. They gotta make some changes.
Yeah, and there's got to be a way. I think the point guard for UConn last year may have overstated the case a little bit, but not totally. If you're practicing until 10 o'clock at night, the chow hall at the university probably is closed. And so, the fact that the kids don't have enough money to buy themselves a pizza or buy their mother a small present on Mother's Day or her birthday, I think is kind of ridiculous. You mentioned earlier about the Notre Dame tight ends, and one of the positions the NCAA takes frequently in their arguments is that the NCAA is a springboard to professional athletics, and they'll be able to make the money there. I was working with the Chinese students a couple weeks ago, and one of the things we talked about was 3 out of every 1,000 Division I NCAA players get drafted in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So the
chances aren't good.
the numbers are so small,
mm-hmm.
but for a few of them, it is the way to the pros. But for the vast majority of them, college football is as far as it's going to go for them. And most of the people who are accused of these things, like the signing autographs and getting paid for it, are probably going to be pros anyway. So I kind of don't understand some of the rulings they come down with, and the inconsistency. Johnny Manziel got a half game.
Mm-hmm.
The running back, I'm not a big Georgia fan, but the running back for Georgia, Todd Gurley, got 4 games. And the kid that's playing for the Cowboys now, when he played at Oklahoma State, got like 8 games.
Mm-hmm.
Des Bryant.
Yeah.
And it's just they're just. I heard Roger Goodell earlier this week get accused of making it up as he goes.
Mm-hmm.
I think the NCAA is kind of guilty of that too. I think they make it up as they go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's irreparable, but I think it's irreparable as long as Mark Emmert's the president. Because I think he has pretty much solidified his position as make as much money as we can, care less about the student athletes. I think somebody needs to come in. First thing they need to do is start a bonfire with the NCAA rules and regulations manual, like you said before, 600 pages or 800 pages, whatever it is, and write policy that makes sense.
I agree. Analyze the life of a student athlete day by day, and try to make it better for them.
Yeah,
it's simple. Why don't you let some football players at these big schools take online classes during the fall? Just let them take in that summer before. I mean, just make some changes. Try to better the lives of these individuals.
When I was at Auburn, I was a student at Auburn. Cadillac Williams took a independent study class.
Mm-hmm.
He needed 1 class to graduate. Good student. I never met him personally, but all indications were he was a good kid, a good student. And he took a independent study class for all the right reasons. Because he knew it was the spring semester, he had to go to all the workouts, had to go to the combines, had to go to pro day. And I just happened to take an independent study class that same semester. And nobody cared.
Autographs?
Nobody cared that I took an independent study class. And I can tell you, in that class, I had no test and no paper. But it was one of the most difficult classes I ever took. Because I read a book each week and came in the next week and talked about it for an hour or 2 hours with my professor. There was nowhere to hide. It was just him and I, so you had to know it. And I'm sure that Cadillac Williams, it wasn't quite that detailed, but I was a doctoral student, he was a bachelor student. But I'm sure he did the work.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys work so hard to be good athletes. And we hear all these stories about student athletes this, and should they really be called athlete students or student athletes? The fact still remains the vast majority of student athletes in this country are good students. Mm-hmm. And we only hear about we have the same thing here every day. 98% of our students are awesome. We have those 2% that are knuckleheads, and it's the same thing in college athletics, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I think when you see the data, the vast majority of schools will report that the graduation rate for the student athletes is pretty much the same as the students. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think it's fair to compare graduation rates at Duke and University of Florida. But I think if you compare student athletes at Duke with the general population at Duke and student athletes at Florida with the general population of Florida, I think you'll see that
better measurement.
Graduation rates are very similar. But should the NCAA be completely reformulated, or what can we do to make this organization do what it's supposed to do?
I think, again, I think the Power 5 conferences were correct in coming out. I think you got to, again, going back to the comparison of Wagner and Alabama, I think you got to, especially that Division I level, I see there's a huge distance between some of those schools. So I think you do have to reformat some of those rules and regulations, but I think if we can maybe let those big five put them in a special category and let them implement, maybe with a little oversight by the NCAA.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Big Five conference come up with. I think in reality, it could serve as a model
You could.
for what the NCAA needs to do, and you just make adjustments. You make
I
adjustments
agree.
for other schools. You know, we got an email from one of my students who's in California, and she talked about how much she enjoyed this program. So we encourage all of our students and everybody out there, if you can't watch us live, you can pick us up on YouTube, and almost always through our website, ussa.edu. You can get the programs from any week. We do this every Wednesday morning at 11:30 Central Time, 9:30 for you folks out there on the left coast. And if you ever have any ideas of something you want us to talk about, you can email us at sportstalk@ussa.edu. That's sportstalk@ussa.edu. And we certainly welcome any of you to join us live any Wednesday morning at 11:30 Central. So until next week, have a great week in sports. And this is the United States Sports Academy saying so long.